Anyway, so extending Kubernetes with gRPC. Originally, this was supposed to be a full talk, but it's not. It's going to be a lightning talk. gRPC, Universal Open Source RPC Framework, designed to create efficient and fast services with protocol buffers and usually HTTP2. Now, a gRPC service can scale from tiny sensor devices all the way to mobile, back-end compute devices, desktop, etc. Because it's a universal RPC services, you write one service, and all of these devices can communicate with the gRPC service. Now, it turns out that because gRPC is a client service model, you can have the client and the service either co-located on the same host, or the service can be externally on its own host. Now, when the host and the service, when the client and the service are on the same host, you can use UNIX domain sockets so that your service and your gRPC, your client and your gRPC server can communicate using UNIX domain sockets. Using that fact, gRPC turns out to be a great candidate for creating plugin framework. And matter of fact, one of the first plugin framework that came out in the Go arena used gRPC as a backend from, I think it was Mitchell Hashimoto from HashiCorp who created it. Now, let's look at a specific example of using gRPC as a plugin framework, and we're going to look at the CSI, which is an actual project that is part of Kubernetes that is using gRPC to extend Kubernetes as a plugin model. So the container storage interface is basically an interface defined as a gRPC service, and it allows storage operation to be externalized rather than being baked inside Kubernetes itself. You can use gRPC. You can use CSI to define your storage as a storage provider and create a driver, and have that storage provider driver live outside of Kubernetes. Now, one of the things, so this is the internally, this is what it looks like, and this is how it was done. So before CSI, all of this used to happen inside the Kubernetes itself. With CSI, what we have is an internal CSI volume that delegates storage operation externally to a driver. So the CSI driver lives in a pod, and it also has other components that provide external attacher and external provisioner services. And using gRPC, the driver is able to communicate with Kubernetes internally and externally with the other components that make up the driver. So this has allowed vendors and everyone who desires to create to become a provider of storage to create their own driver without having to bake in the code as it used to be inside Kubernetes. Now, there are other frameworks that are looking at that has used gRPC as an external way of creating plugins. The CRI, Device Management Plugin Framework, the Key Management Framework, and probably more will come. And one of the things they're looking at is how CSI is doing to see if it's a way to continue, if it's one way to continue to extend Kubernetes. And I have 20 seconds to spare. Thank you.